One of the things you're talking about this weekend is the health benefits of fermented sourdough bread. Can you discuss that? I mean, it sounds good, but...
Oh, it is delicious, and more importantly, it's a great delivery system for butter and pate and raw cheeses. I believe that probably the number one culprit in Western cultures that has created so much degradation of the gut, so many different digestive issues, is that we as a nation consume or improperly prepared grains. We consume bread that is made in about 60 minutes. Okay, historically, once man began farming and incorporated grains into the diet, we know that much care was taken to prepare the grains. Hippocrates even talked about this about 400 years before Christ. He was talking about how grain is beneficial solely dependent upon the manner in which it's prepared. And you cannot break down the phytic acid and the other anti-nutrients that are in grain and that have a purpose during the growth process, but need to be broken down in order for us as humans to be able to fully assimilate and have benefit from the grains. You can't get rid of those nutrients in 60 seconds. That's why ancient people who had a lot of wisdom intuitively about their food would always ferment their grains, sometimes for 3 days, sometimes for 2 weeks, depending upon the region and the type of grain they were using. So what we're going to do in one of our workshops this weekend is we're going to talk about how do you make true fermented sourdough bread. And it's about a 48-hour process, but we have seen over and over. In fact, Min Kim is going to be teaching that primarily. I'm going to be just supporting her, but she was a client of mine who, when it was time to bring grains back into her family's diet, I said, it's going to be really important, though, that you only use fermented true sourdough bread. So she went to work, and she spent months studying and testing different methods, and she's really perfected the art of making a true artisan sourdough bread. So she's going to be talking about that with us.
Is that one of the reasons why we hear the whole gluten problem? And
that is definitely one of our biggest reasons we're seeing so much gluten intolerance and sensitivity. We're also dealing with a grain that is quite different than it was, say, 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. The hybrid wheats that we see now are much more complex than some of the old varieties of wheat, like einkorn, for instance. So the wheat is being manipulated, and so it's a little bit different beast than what our ancestors used, especially over the last 50 years.
So what goes into fermenting if someone wants to do it at home? I mean, give us the condensed version,
Okay.
But what happens and what do you do?
Well, it's pretty simple in that all you need is flour, and I prefer using freshly milled flour. I have a little European grain mill that I use at home. Flour, salt, water, air, and time. That's all you need.
Okay.
So you began with a starter that you have made from flour and water and the air that over time begins to grow, and basically it's the bacteria that's in whatever environment you are, that bacteria starts breaking down the gluten, and you end up with what we call starter. And so then we take the starter, and then we make what's called a leaven. And then from the leaven, you're adding more flour, you're making your dough, you're allowing the dough to sit out for, what we do is it sits out for about 12 hours during the process of getting it to dough. And then it goes into the fridge for a longer, slower fermentation process for about 36 hours. And we've tested it and even done it as long as 48. Depends on how bitey you like your sourdough. But it just involves time and being able to be available. But what I've found is if I know, that there's one day in the process that it's more important that you're around because you're going to be moving the dough, folding the dough. But for the most part, except for that one day, a few hours here or there, it's a very doable process. And we're hoping to see kind of the art of making bread revived. And I do believe there's a trend in that direction already.